All right, what's up, Mortgage Coach and Trust Engine community? I know that I'm creating more content than normal, so there's more videos coming out of our platform than typical, but it's not a typical market. Between the NAR settlement that was announced last Friday, that compelled me to interview both realtors throughout the week, as well as loan officers that I think are doing the right things, and by the way, I don't think everybody's doing the right thing right now. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that just because I'm creating content where I'm showcasing both realtors that are absolutely doing the right thing. Make sure you check out the interview I did with Carrie Scholl. We'll put a link down below. It's incredible. Like it's already got 1,000 views and we haven't even started promoting it. I posted it late last night and it's just, going viral. I also did an interview with Sean Herrero, who is the number 22 producer at Countrywide or Cross Country. Sorry, Brian, you're on the call, so I made a slip. And then by the way, Brian, you're gonna love this because we're gonna call this Moneyball 2. So Sean is the number 22 production leader at Cross Country last year, but they have a scoring system, that's got about, I don't know, 12 to 15 metrics that have things like how many underwriting touch points per file, what is the conversion, what are the price exceptions, app to close. So, they've got 16 criteria that basically say who's a good team player, like who's a loan officer that's doing the right thing, and he's number 6 out of 4,400. So guys, I'll put a link down below to how Sean is approaching this market. So I interviewed Brian last week. We released that. It's part of our monthly interview that I do with Brian, where every month he comes in and just tells us, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I think is going to happen with rates. These are big topics. And given who he is and the decades of experience that Brian has, it's super valuable. And someone made a question. And Brian, was that question on LinkedIn or was that in YouTube? Where did the question come in?
In YouTube. I happened to notice it when you shot me the link to the video when it was complete, and I just noticed there was a question in your YouTube comment section, kind of around what the perspective was on this recent MBA data that just came out.
Yeah, and so by the way, we're listening to you. Like if you watch this and you got value, give it a like. And if you watch this and you have a question, put that question down below, because Brian and we're not necessarily going to jump on and do another interview, but we might, so put your questions down below and we'll definitely take note of those questions. And as we do these monthly updates, we'll make sure your questions get answered. So Brian, you reached out to me. You're pretty passionate about this topic. You named the call. Like I said, what do you want to call it? He's like, let's call it Moneyball 2, Moneyball Mortgage 2.0. So kind of, tell us the answer to the question and why did you want to call this Moneyball Mortgage 2.0?
Well, so thank you. And I'll answer that, but I would just add a couple of items to your, plethora of things going on here. Last week we had the two big inflation numbers. You had the NAR settlement. Today we had the Fed, announced that they intend to hold rates flat. So good thing there is that they didn't raise rates for fear of, continued inflation. I see that as a huge positive. The bond market felt it pretty good. We're down to like 427 here about 20 minutes ago. But it's not, it's not dramatically improving. And they kind of reaffirmed the number of rate cuts in the second half of this year into 25, with the exception that they took one off the board for 2025. And most of the stuff I saw suggested rates would maybe not drop below 6%. I don't necessarily personally believe that, but who am I to outguess Jay Powell or, all the Wall Street smart guys and gals? But in short, your premise of Moneyball Mortgage was from the premise of really, it's not just about volume. It's about all the rest of the metrics and how you think about, is the company you're working with or for making money? Are you making money? Are you valuable to an organization? And so some data came out earlier this week from the MBA around profitability in the mortgage business for Q4. So we're sitting here in the middle part of March. So this is Q4 data on a report that the MBA publishes each quarter. And I just found some of the data interesting. And then the gentleman who was watching our video was specifically asking about it. So to me, it's really about understanding contextually about what's going on in your business and in the market in general. And to your point, Dave, there's just an immense flood of things going on. I get asked comments continuously to respond to this or that in the press. So there's no shortage of things happening. And under the general thesis that I talked about in our most recent update, I think being a professional in our business, in the mortgage space, requires you to be current and have an understanding of what's actually going on in the business. So that's why I reached out to you to want to answer the gentleman's question, because I thought others had that question, and I've had a lot of those questions directly to me as well. So I thought this would be a great format, maybe to get something out on video with kind of a response to the question.
Yeah, and here is the question. So Alan asked this. If you go back, and we'll put a link down below, it was released on YouTube 4 days ago, and he said, would have been great to hear Brian's thoughts on the Q4 2023 losses growing to $2,109 a closed loan. So that was the question that was asked precisely. And now, Brian, what are your thoughts? Tell us some of your takeaways.
So my first thought is not shocking, right? Just based on the advisory, consulting, and M&A work that I'm personally involved in. Not surprising. I think Q4 was a really difficult year, or a quarter rather, for last year. And in my opinion, likely suggests that Q1 of this year, based on what's gone on here in early Q1 with rates kind of popping back up, is not going to be materially better, with one maybe notable exception. The data that was in the MBA report basically suggested that the average mortgage banking company, IMB, and banks that are materially involved in mortgage lost an average of $2,109 on a per loan basis on every loan that was closed in Q4. And if you think about that, right, that's 2109 divided by 344,000, which was the other data that came out. The average loan amount is a 61 basis point loss. In the data that they had, it was 74, but that was using a different average loan amount. The long and short, you're losing, anywhere from 0.6 to 0.75 of a point per loan. And you're turning around and you're paying everybody in your company, whether it's the originator, underwriters, processors, whatever, their comp. So you've got an imbalance where some players in the business are making money, but the companies they're working for are, in most cases, not all, in most cases, losing money. It was a little bit of a confusing stat that's in the article. And if you don't mind, Dave, I can put the article up a little bit. I got a couple of areas.
Yeah, no, share your screen, and let's chalkboard.
Yeah, let me get this up and expand it a little bit here so that people can see it well. There we go. So this chart over here on the left, can you see it, Dave? Okay.
Yeah, and anyone listening to this, I will put a link to this article. It won't have Brian's highlights, but I'll put a link to the article, down below in show notes. And then, Brian, if you don't mind forwarding this to me via email, just so I have this. But go ahead.
Gladly do it. So if you look at the chart right at the top here, and it's not easy to see. Frankly, it's not easy to see in the original version either. But all you need to see is the last 4 or 5 quarters being a loss, right? Start there. Secondly, one of the things they put in here is that 29% of companies actually made a profit in Q4. That's a little misleading. They go on to clear it up for themselves. Many of the folks that were profitable because of servicing income, not origination income. And they make that point. I don't think the point is very clear, but they make that point. Point being is, if you extract servicing income and just look at origination profitability, it's not 29%. And they don't speak to a number, but I'll bet you dinner it's well less than 10%. Well less than 10% in terms of production. And so you've got, they had a variety of other pieces of what I'd consider to be kind of sub data in here. The average pre-tax loss was 73 basis points. The average net production loss was 34 basis points in 2023, and a loss of 99 basis points a year ago. So you could argue it's marginally improved. The other interesting data, revenue on a per loan basis actually increased about 6 basis points, up to 334 from 329, 5 basis points, give or take. So you saw revenue go up, but they had a really interesting piece of data in here, Dave, that speaks to some of the conversations I know you have every day and that you and I have had in the past. Is down here in this section that talks about total loan production expenses, which includes commissions, comp, occupancy, equipment, blah, 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 increased to $12,485 a loan, up from $11,441 a loan in the third quarter of 23. And the fourth quarter of 2008, I found this to be really interesting. The all-in cost to produce a loan was $7,389. So we're up $5,000 per loan in expense. And then this next bullet down, you'll see I typed in the word brutal. Median productivity measured as loans closed per retail or consumer direct production employee decreased to 1.1 loans per employee in the fourth quarter, down from 1.3. Well, 1.3 to 1.1 doesn't sound like a lot till you realize it's almost 20% drop in productivity, which is just, brutal. That's why I stuck that comment in there mostly to myself. But essentially, the average lender is making $10,300 a loan and spending $12,485 a loan. That's really what you need to know, right? And so at some level, and I'll overstate this, at some level, I don't care how much cash you have. If you're writing a check for $2,000 in every loan you close, it's only time. And so looking at the detail underneath this, and this is where we come back to Moneyball Mortgage 2.0, Dave, looking at detail of understanding what's going into that expense line, understanding how compensation is being adjusted or not, understanding how, we've all seen this rapid rise in credit bureau costs, right, across the entire industry, where the credit bureau companies suddenly woke up one day and realized everybody was pulling a single, a single repository credit bureau for $2 and instead of $110 or whatever. So they raised the price overnight. And so if you're doing a ton of pre-quals and you're not getting any pull through, that $12,400 in your company, remember, this is on average. This is on average. So you have companies out there where that number is $20,000, $25,000 per loan. And where revenue is not $10,000, it's $8,000 or $9,000 a loan. And so the spread of the negative carry could be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a loan. You do a couple thousand loans a month, or 1,000 loans a month, or 600 loans a month, or pick a number as a company, depending on your size. You are burning through your cash at an unprecedented rate. And all you have to do is look at this chart. The only quarter that was worse was Q4 of 23, but that was a pretty ugly quarter. And it's not fixing. There's the word right there. It's not fixing, other than, in my opinion, companies that recognize this and have continued to move to make their people more productive, to help their sales force, to use data to target, to call on the right people. The other data that came out, Jeff at Ingenious published or posted some data on loan officer segmentation a day or two ago in LinkedIn that basically shows that about 30 or 40% of all the originators in the industry account for 80+% of the volume. That's not a revolutionary number. I think most people intuitively think that's true. But if your company has the bottom third and they're calling on the wrong set of realtors who aren't doing the things that this lady you just interviewed talked about doing, and you're working for a company that's losing a couple $1,000 alone, or you're in a company that's losing money or maybe making money, but you're losing $2,000 every loan you close because of your strategies, those are things I think people have to think about. So let me take a breath, and I apologize for the long-winded answer, but
no, he wasn't long-winded, and I think it was great. And I hope, whether you are C-suite executive, a regional leader, a branch manager, or an originator, like, you really need to care. I know Sean was super proud of the fact that, he was number 6 in the company when you really looked at all this data. And then, you know, kind of going back to Moneyball mortgage number one, you know, when you and I did a panel at the Housing Wire event with James Heck, and, you know, I've interviewed you on that, but it started, my first Moneyball interview was with Jim Deitch. And, you know, this is an anonymized case study of an IMB where not all loan officers are losing money. You know, like there's a tier of loan officers at every company in Q4 and Q1 that are profitable per loan. And then there's a tier of loan officers. By the way, are you hearing my dog?
No.
Oh, okay. It's going crazy. But, you know, there's a tier of loan officers, and Jim says, when I do this, sometimes they're making a couple hundred. Probably in this market, they're losing a couple hundred. In this case, they were losing 360. And then, guys, this is it. There's a tier of loan officers, regardless of how many loans they're closing, you know, President's Club or not, that are losing money per loans. And Brian, tell me if you agree with this. I don't think it's necessary. You know, like, well, no, I don't not think. I have the data, and I know that if loan officers follow best practice systems and processes in how they have a conversation with the consumer and how they present strategies to a consumer, they have less price exceptions. They have better conversion, because the difference between this group and this group, again, there was a time when the difference was loaded teams and brick and mortar costs. But I mean, I think we're at the point where the teams are down, the brick and mortar's cut, and now it really is conversion and concession is the difference between the, you know, winning and losing in this business. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, Dave, you're wearing a shirt that says Mortgage Coach, right? And when we're talking to, and by the way, I think there's a lot of really brilliant originators many of which are doing exactly the right things out there. So let me say that on the front end. But I don't care who you are, whether you're a mortgage originator, a professional athlete, whatever, everybody needs a coach. And to the degree you're a coach, you're a manager, sales manager, branch manager, area, regional, divisional, head of production, listening to this video, your obligation to coach people individually on the kinds of things that can repair their business and make them more successful. Obviously, it accrues to the company that you're running or with, but it also accrues to you and it accrues to them. And so there is an obligation, in my view, to find those people, to use data to identify that very strata that you just went through, Dave. Who is in that bottom third, who's in the middle third, but also, as importantly, in that best group that you had on the far left side. There's an old saying in this business: if you want to win a race, jump on the horse in front of the race, right? You got a racehorse that's out there in front of the race. How do you help him or her get even better, even more economic, right? Because they're doing volume. So the multiplier to you is impactful, very impactful in your business. And so I think a lot of people spend a lot of their time coaching the bottom 30%, which clearly they need to be coached up or coached out. But don't forget your best players in those top two quadrants. And how do you make them more economic times their volume? You'll like the results.
Yeah, let me show you something else. This is a actual report that's part of our borrower intelligence platform. And, we're trying to be predictive. You know, like one of the things that, we believe that if you want to win in the mortgage long-term and short-term, because guys, we're going to have better times ahead, but you know what? We're going to have bad times ahead too. Like we're not done with rates going up, rates going down, good times and bad times. But, this is, when I think of Moneyball Mortgage, this is a great example of one of the things we're doing to help our clients. Is each one of these dots is a loan officer. And the green line represents opportunities we've identified in their database on a monthly basis that, like, hey, there's a loan. The pink line is applications, RESPA apps, specifically. And then the line down here is closed loans. So literally, at scale, to be managing opportunities, applications, and closed loans. And you know what? The loan officers with that are seeing signals, they're taking action, they're grabbing apps, they have high conversion. You know what? They're profitable. And I do think that's the kind of measurement that companies need to put in place. and really, manage for conversion. What are your thoughts on that?
My first thought is I'll gladly send you the thing I put up if you'll send me that graph back. I love that graph. So I think you're dead on. Look, I think the business is really hard right now, and it's likely to get more difficult, not because of rate scenarios, but because of all the other influences into the business. You talked about the NAR settlement or lawsuit or whatever, right? I don't know that anybody absolutely knows exactly how that's going to play out yet, although to your point, I've read some things that I thought were pretty insightful. But here's what I know. I think a lot of those realtors are going to try to get additional revenue by getting in the mortgage space. They're already doing it, right? That's not a secret. I've read a bunch of stuff recently that, people are out there doing that. I haven't seen a model that's really worked well yet. And I think somebody's going to make some huge mistakes. But in short, I think the winners this year and next are going to be the folks who recognize whether you have your own company or you work for a company, you really have your own business. And if you're not analyzing your own business every day, every week, every month, and being honest with yourself about what's working and what isn't and the value you bring, I think the next 18 months are going to continue to shake people out of the business. My M&A business is up materially. And I don't say that, it's not a positive in my view. That means people are capitulating. But that said, use data, be smart, analyze what you're doing, know your value, and pay attention to these greater metrics that are operating in the business and how that will likely impact the company you work with or for.
I agree. And I can't help it. We're going to be, in 2 weeks, we're going to be announcing an innovation from Trust Engine, which, Brian, you're going to be the first one. Well, I actually showed this during that real estate interview yesterday. So it'll be the second time I've shown this to the public market, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Maybe even get a quote from you out of this. And again, you've seen our Bar Intelligence platform, Brian, where we're like, hey, most lenders and loan officers, they don't know what's going on in their database. I think it's fairly common in the mortgage space, especially with the real operators now that, they're getting trigger alerts. They're getting inquiry alerts when someone runs a credit report and they're cheating on you. The problem with all this is they're late. Like the person's in the market, and to really, let's say, optimize profitability, we need to improve the front end sales skills of the loan officer. And by the way, it's not hard. It can be done in hours. Like that's what I do. But how can we predict it? And then, really start identifying, hey, who's ready to move up? Who's ready to move down? But one of the challenges is that even if, a lender has these alerts, they're in CRMs that loan officers don't log into, so most lenders, they're lucky if 30% of the loan officers are using it. So Brian, tell me what you think of this. We created an app. It's called the Trust Engine app. And it's focused on usually in a database, about 1% of that database is an opportunity. Like they're thinking about buying, selling, or refinancing. And so we're using data to sort them. And so the loan officer opens the app. They literally know who, from a data perspective, is most probable. If the consumer clicked on the email that we sent them, we call it a data-driven needs message, then we'll put them even higher. And then if the loan officer clicks on that, when they click on it, they can text them, they can email them, they can call them. And then we're also putting scripts. So it's like, be at your top 1%, send a message, engage, and then scripting for the loan officer all in one place. What do you think about that new app?
Look, I think it's a great approach, especially when you're putting it right on people's phones. The key will be adoption.
Yeah.
Right. To your previous point, you got to open the app, see it, and take action. Right.
Yeah. Well, you just got to log in once. We're setting up so you log in once.
No, I got it. So at least you took some of that off, right? So you log in once, boom, you got it. But then you got to take action. Then, as you know, you got to be responsive. You got to be thoughtful. You got to be on your game in terms of your pitch, whether you have a script. I mean, I know you know this. if somebody starts reading one of those scripts to a consumer, the conversation will be over in about a nanosecond, right? And so how do you put it in your own voice? How do you put it in your own personality? How do you add value in the course of that script? And then how do you ask for the order? Right? I watch people sell themselves right into, right through, and right out the other side of a sell all the time, and not one time did they ask for the order.
Yeah, no, there's so much training that needs to be done. So guys, for the gentleman who posted that question, hopefully you got more than what you thought you were going to get. And Brian, I really appreciate you being so willing to, invest your time and your leadership in this community. Anyone listening to this, follow this man on LinkedIn. There's a lot of busyness on social media, but Brian Hale is business on social media. Like, he is a data-driven.
To that point, I just posted our most recent interview and the quarterly update on my LinkedIn and my social media pieces as well. So the people, if they haven't seen yours, they can certainly go there and see it as well, and you get the same content. So,
oh, cool. Well, thank you for that. But follow this man. We'll put a link down below, and hopefully you got value. Brian Hale, appreciate you, my brother.
take care, man.
All right, guys, this is a wrap. Hey, make sure you follow us on, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a lot of activity going on in our Trust Engine Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group. I literally think I approved like 60 some odd people yesterday. So, follow us in that private group. Like, this interview is live in there, and I'm interviewing multiple realtors, top loan officers every week. And at least for this week, I'm doing it daily. I might give it next week. I might go daily and then get back to like 2 or 3 interviews a week. Take care, y'all.